This is a non-Disney Fanatics review of Tokyo Disneyland. I had the opportunity to spend 2 full days at the resort. I did 1 day at each park. I'll be discussing Tokyo Disney Sea in the next review, but for this one I wanted to focus on the classic castle park that is the original Tokyo Disneyland. This is one of the most visited parks in the world, and it certainly showed based off of our experience there. It was fairly busy, but as of with most Disney parks, they sure know how to handle capacity. The park was built to handle a large amount of people, so we saw wide midways, fast operations, and high capacity attractions. Now, if you've been to Magic Kingdom or the original Disneyland, you'll find that most of the attractions that they had at those parks can also be found here. As I mentioned in the beginning, I am not a die-hard Disney fan, so I'm not going to point out every major differences. I'll try to cover a few of the main ones that stood out to me, and because there are a lot of attractions in this park, there is a lot to cover. I'll do my best to hit the main points. So starting off with how you get to the park, like every other park we visited in Japan, we took a train here and it dropped us off right near the entrance, and then you cross a bridge that heads towards the front gate. We saw a massive hotel right outside the entrance. We chose not to stay there because it was rather expensive, but it certainly would have been cool to stay on site. We bought a 2-day ticket here with the intentions of using the second day at Disney Sea. A 1-day ticket was 7,400 yen, or about $74 US. As I mentioned, we bought the 2-day ticket, which was 13,200 yen, or about $132, which, yes, made it the most expensive parks we did in Japan. However, that is cheap compared to the parks in America. $132 wouldn't even get you a park hopper. So we weren't complaining about the prices. That was music to our ears. Now, one of our first impressions of the place was actually not too much of a great one. The main entrance is under construction. And that was a general theme that we saw throughout both Disney parks. We were told they were doing all that construction now so that they'd get ready for the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which is ironic because that has since been pushed to 2021 due to the worldwide pandemic. But at the time, that's why we saw a lot of construction going on. So the front entrance certainly was not much to rave about. We got in fairly quickly, which was good. But one thing I thought was cool is that their main street, or here it's called the World Bazaar, has a cover over it. We also saw this at Universal Studios Japan, and it's just a neat atmosphere. You know, Japan is known for getting a lot of rain, and so it's nice that this is covered, so when it does rain, you can do all of your shopping or eat at some restaurants and not have to worry about getting wet. So it was neat. I actually really liked that. Now, we got here fairly early in the morning, and our intention was to knock out as many attractions as quickly as possible. We had the entire day to spend here, but we didn't want to spend it all waiting in lines. So we went straight for Tomorrowland, and before I talk about the rides we did, I just want to say, I'm sorry, this was easily my least favorite Tomorrowland I've ever been in. I was not impressed at all. Much like the Tomorrowland at Magic Kingdom, this one just felt outdated. In my opinion, it didn't even look that nice, so I can't say my impressions were very high to begin with. But discussing the attractions we did, Space Mountain was almost identical to Disneyland's, which is good because I'm not a big fan of the Space Mountain at Magic Kingdom. This one was on par with the original Disneyland's. One thing I thought was actually interesting is it was sponsored by Coke. I was like, okay, I didn't know they had Coke in space on the mountains there, but all right. The operations for that attraction were very fast. The interior feels very similar to the other Space Mountains. We spent most of our waiting in an outdoor queue and almost felt like a temporary queue. There wasn't any theming around it. Very loose, just common switchbacks. And then once you get inside the building, that's where it started to get a little more themed. And we saw that generally with every attraction in the park. They'd have an overflow queue that wasn't themed at all. And then once you got into the actual building where the rides were held, that's when we saw some theming. So after Space Mountain, we hit up Star Tours, and this is fun. You know, I've done multiple Star Tours, and it's kind of funny when you experience one in a language that you don't speak, because you know what is supposed to be happening on screen. You understand the story of what is going on, but you don't understand anything that they're physically saying. We did Star Tours twice, and it was funny. The second time we did it, I got called out as the spy, so they showed my picture on screen. Our whole group started shouting and screaming, and we ended up getting the entire vehicle super hyped up, and we felt like everyone was feeding off of our energy. So that ended up being one of my favorite experiences of the day. Fairly close to Star Tours is Monsters, Inc. And this is an attraction that is exclusive to this park, and it's a pretty neat setup. The way it works is you're essentially given a flashlight and you're playing hide and seek with the characters from the movie, so you're shining your light on the different animatronics as you move around the ride. And the ride is really cool. I did like it, but I had a few problems with it. First off, this line moved incredibly slow. It is a low capacity attraction, and the fast pass to standby ratio is totally screwed up. We witnessed probably 70 or 80% of people going through the line that had fast passes, and then only 30 to 20% of the standby line getting allowed in after them, which just wasn't great. It was frustrating watching everyone cut in front of us, which I understand, that's how it works with the Disney parks. We chose to get some fast passes for some other attractions, and I realized that if we had wanted to, we could have gotten a fast pass for Monsters Inc., but I still think that that doesn't change the idea that you need to have a fairly even ratio for the fast pass to standby people that you're allowing through. I don't know if it's like that all the time, but it was when we were there. The other issue I had with this ride is they needed to transfer off some vehicles because our ride experience kept on getting interrupted because of them loading and unloading. We'd be partway through the ride and the whole thing would stop. We'd sit there for a minute and then it would start up again and then it would stop. And then start up again and stop. Simply because they had too many vehicles on the track. If they had transferred some off, then our ride experience would have gone completely interrupted. And actually, it would have increased capacity and maybe made that line move faster. So I felt like my experience on that ride was definitely affected due to this setup. One other ride I want to touch on that had a really slow moving line was also Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters. The actual ride is fine. It doesn't do a whole lot for me, but it was just kind of annoying because of how slow the line moved. But pretty much every other line at this park moved pretty quick. Now, I know I touched on this a little bit with Star Tours, but one thing that I just find so interesting is the ratio of what rides are in English and what rides are in Japanese. And how do they decide which to do in which language? Because logically, it should all be in Japanese, but that is not the case. Pirates of the Caribbean is all in English. And I just found that so interesting because based off of our experience of 3 weeks in Japan, we realized that most Japanese people did not speak English. So I thought it was kind of weird that that ride was all in English. But then you go to Pooh's Honey Hunt, Jungle Cruise, those are all in Japanese. But while we're talking about Jungle Cruise, that was probably one of the funniest experiences of the day because our crew member was getting so into it and cracking jokes and everyone is laughing and we're just sitting there. We didn't understand anything. And so we were just playing along, laughing with it, and everyone kept looking at us because they totally knew that we had no idea what was going on. I just thought it was really funny. As for Pooh's Honey Hunt, this is by far, in my opinion, the best ride here. It is so unique and a wicked cool ride system. It's a trackless dark ride, and it is so well done. You enter through a storybook, board a pot of honey, and then pass by all this amazing theming. There's some really cool tricks that this ride does, and there's an awesome scene at the end where there's just tons of vehicles in this massive room all moving around each other. So we did this ride multiple times. It was easily my favorite attraction in the park. It is an original ride that you can only find at this park, so maybe that was part of my reasoning, but I hadn't seen a POV or anything going in, so I did not know what to expect and I was just absolutely floored. A few other classics they have here, of course, they have Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. There's Small World, which I have always hated that attraction, and even when it's in Japanese, I still didn't like it. That thing drives me crazy and I don't know why I decided to do it. So you want my advice, avoid it at all costs. You can find Haunted Mansion here, always a fan favorite. That one in particular is set up like Magic Kingdoms as opposed to Disneyland's. The outside facade looks almost identical. And that's about it for the major attractions that we did here. I don't have any children, so I didn't have any desire to do the attractions meant for younger kids. And so interestingly enough, it meant that we finished up with the rides that we want to do fairly quickly. I'd say by 4 o'clock, we had knocked out everything. And I think part of the reason for that is all of the wait times overestimated the actual length of the line. Every time, without failure, we waited less than what the advertised wait was. And so even though this park has a lot of rides, I felt like I particularly wasn't the target audience for this park. I know a lot of families and especially kids really like it, but I just didn't feel like there was a ton of rides here that really resonated with me, especially since I had done almost all of them at other Disney parks, which is sort of the point, I guess. I mean, this is a castle park. It's supposed to be similar yet slightly different from the others. And while everything was well done, I didn't really feel the need to spend a ton of time here. I actually ended up leaving the park early, even though this is one of those parks that is open late, just because I was done. I felt pretty satisfied with my visit. But a few other things I want to mention before we wrap things up. We did have a few meals here. The food is really high quality, except for we did have a bag of popcorn, and I didn't think it was very good, honestly. It was dry. I didn't even think it was tasty, which I thought was interesting because a lot of people rave about the Disney popcorn, but this popcorn I had, I don't know, maybe I just had a bad batch, but I didn't really like it. The rest of the food I had, though, was very good. I had some chicken curry and rice, and it was excellent. And then later, I had fried prawn and corn and broccoli, and it was really good. I wish the portion size was bigger for the price I paid, but the actual food was tasty. As for the drinks, I think they're cheap compared to most parks in America. We paid 200 yen or about $2 for a bottled drink. I can't say I was a huge fan of the lack of quick service restaurants. When I'm at a theme park, I like to grab my food, eat it real quick, and go. But most of the food places at this park are sit-down restaurants. Some of them pretty dang expensive. And you know, this is a bit of an odd complaint, but I really felt like the park just needed a few more bathrooms. I felt like I'd go long sections of walking without really seeing a restroom. Maybe they were hidden, but for a park the size of this was, I don't know, I just felt like they could have used a few more restrooms here and there. And I'd be curious to know if I was the only one that thought that. And last thing I really want to mention before we wrap things up is I did get a chance to witness the parade here. I was surprised at how well done it was. The floats are cool, they're very bright, colorful, happy, but perhaps the most surprising thing is how dedicated the people are to watching this. The crowds would gather around and save a spot way in advance, and everyone watches the parades. I feel like if you want to get on some rides with short wait times, do it when there's a parade going on. It personally was not my favorite parade we saw in Japan. I actually much preferred Universal Studios Japan's, but the floats were still pretty high quality. And I think that about does it for my review of Tokyo Disneyland. I know I touched on this a little bit, but in general, this park didn't really do a whole lot for me. I much prefer the other Disney park that is located at Tokyo Disney Resort, but I'm still glad I visited here. I'll tell you what, I'm really glad that I visited this park before Disney Sea, because if I had done this park after Disney Sea, I think I would have been so mad. I would have been like, why am I here? I just want to go back to Disney Sea. I probably would have left halfway through the day after wrapping up a couple of the rides and then just go back to Disney Sea. That's how amazing that park was. I mean, if they didn't have Pooh's Honey Hunt, I don't think I would ever go back here. I know they are set to get a Beauty and the Beast high-tech dark ride, which I think will be a great fit at this park. So I imagine that at some point I will go back here so I can do Pooh's Honey Hunt and that Beauty and the Beast attraction. But frankly, I don't think I'll spend too much time here. I'll just go do those rides and then head into Disney Sea. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of Tokyo Disneyland if you've had the opportunity to visit? If it's on your list of places that you want to stop by, if this review helped you, and of course, make sure to stay tuned for more park reviews here at Coaster Studios, and I'll see you next time.